Let's try a quadratic example. So for quadratic equations of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, the solution of a quadratic equation are given by the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula in this case is x equals negative v plus or minus the square root of v squared minus 4 times a times c, all of it divided by 2 times a. And in this case, our example is negative 4x squared plus 7x equals negative 2. So let's start with the quadratic equation. General form of a quadratic equation, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Notice I sort of highlighted a in green, b in red, and c in blue to reference what a, b, and c are in this case. Agreed? And we'll be using the quadratic formula once again, which we have at the bottom left there, but I'll just restate it. That way we have the a, b, and c colors reflecting it. So x equals negative v plus or minus the square root of v squared minus 4 times a times c, all of it divided by 2a. Okay, and let's start by writing our formula once again, that way we can see it. So I just copied the formula down at the bottom, back here at the top. So we have negative 2 equals negative 4 times x squared plus 7x. Do realize I just flipped it over, so reversed order, but that should totally be okay, because either way I want to set it equal to 0. So in order to have everything on one side, I must move the negative 2 to have it equal to 0. So moving the negative 2 makes it a positive 2. And what I do to one side, I must do to the other side, right? The 2 has no x, so it's not going to be added to the x squared or the x. So in other words, we're just adding it to the end for this case scenario. So we now have 0 equals negative 4x squared plus 7x plus 2. And once again, notice my color coding on there to make it easier. I highly recommend when you're doing these types of problems, you always write what a equals, b equals, and c equals, and fill them in. So in this case, the a value is the negative 4 in front of the x squared. Once again, note, it does not include the x squared. It's just the number. In this case, it's a negative 4. The v value is a positive 7, and the c value is a positive 2. So once again, it does include the sign, but not the variables. So let's start with our quadratic formula, and I'll start with the blank form. So here's my blank form technically. I call it my blank canvas. So essentially I'm going to fill it in. Wherever my b values are, I'm going to put a positive 7. Wherever my a values are, I'm going to put a negative 4. And wherever my c values are, I'm going to put a 2. So filling in with the right spot, the right numbers. There we go. And the first set of parentheses, I have a 7. Second set of parentheses inside the radicand or square root, where I have the square, I have a 7 as well. And then next to the 4, I have a set of parentheses where my a goes, I'll put a negative 4. And then also on the bottom, 2 times the a value would be a negative 4 in this case. And finally, my c value of 2 is at the top and parentheses. So there's my 2. So in this case, I have a negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 7 squared minus 4 times negative 4 times 2. All of it divided by 2 times negative 4. And now it's time to start simplifying. So be aware, your quadratic formula, it's not very difficult. It's more of a tedious job because you want to write step-by-step formulas or values. That way you don't miss a step by accident. But otherwise, it's a fairly straightforward equation to use. So in this case, I'm just going to try to go step by step. And my first step is to realize that if I have 7 squared, 7 times 7 gives me 49, right? And let's not forget my square root, and along with a plus or minus as well, in case we forget the plus and minus by accident. If I take negative 4, 4 times 4 is 16, negative times negative is a positive, so I get positive 16. At the bottom, 2 times 4 is 8, positive times a negative gives me negative 8 for the bottom number now. And I'm just going to carry down that 2. So I'm bringing down that 2 so we can see that it's multiplying my next step. So my next step, x equals, once again, negative 7 plus or minus. There is my 49, and 16 times 2 gives me 32. 16 times 2 gives me 32, hence the reason why I have 32. I still need a radical sign, so I still need a square root there. On the bottom, I still have my negative 8 from the previous step. Next step, x equals, and I'm going to take the 49 plus 32 basically. So negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 81. So 49 plus 32 should give me 81. And now all of it divided by negative 8 still. Okay, what is the square root of 81 now? Well, That should give us plus or minus 9, agreed? So we have negative 7 plus or minus 9 divided by negative 8 so far. The plus or minus implies I have two possible solutions. So let me put a dashed line, that way I can kind of show you where I'm going to go into the next step without having to use extra space. So I'm just proceeding with that in that same area and sort of dividing so you can see where I'm continuing my work. So going over and continue my work here, and I'm splitting it up basically into two equations. X equals negative 7 plus 9 divided by negative 8. Notice that's where I'm splitting it up. The first one's a positive one, and the second one I'm going to make it a negative 9 instead. So x equals negative 7 minus 9 divided by negative 8. And now it's time to simplify. I'll simplify the one on the left side first. Negative 7 plus 9 will give us positive 2. And positive 2 divided by negative 8, you can write it as a decimal value or an exact value. So here we'd have negative 1/4, or equivalent if you divide, well, 0.25, right? A quarter, negative a quarter. So I'll leave it as an exact value as negative 1/4. And let's simplify on the right side now. Negative 7 minus 9, they're both negative, right? So I borrow $7 and borrow $9 more. I borrowed a total of $16. So I need a negative there to say I borrowed, right? Or negative 7 minus 9 will give us negative 16. 16 divided by 8. Did I hear 2? Negative divided by negative is a positive. So 16 divided by 8 gives us 2. And it's a positive 2 in this case. So therefore, there we have our final answer. For this case, we solve a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. And we got our answers of x equals negative 1/4 and x equals 2. Once again, highly recommend you make a list of A, B, and C values to make your life easier in the long run.